Nathaniel Stone stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his corner office on the 47th floor, watching the city wake up below. At exactly 6:30 a.m., his coffee arrived, black, no sugar. Served in the same ceramic mug he'd used for the past 8 years. Routine was his armor, precision his weapon against chaos. Stone Dynamics had grown from a small software startup to a billion-dollar empire under his leadership. The company's gleaming headquarters in downtown Seattle housed over 3,000 employees, each one carefully selected, meticulously managed, strictly governed by a set of rules that Nathaniel himself had crafted. But there was one rule that stood above all others, carved into his very soul through bitter experience. Never mix business with pleasure. No office romances. No exceptions. No compromises. The ghost of past mistakes, Rebecca Hayes, his executive assistant for the past 5 years, knocked softly before entering. She was one of the few people who understood the weight behind his famous rule. She had been there during the aftermath of the Jennifer Morgan incident, the brilliant marketing director, who had nearly cost him everything when their relationship imploded spectacularly. Taking half his senior team and 2 major clients with it, the new consultant is here for the 9 a.m. meeting, Rebecca announced, placing a thick portfolio on his desk. Victoria Blackwood from Meridian Solutions. Her credentials are impressive. Nathaniel nodded without looking up from his tablet, where quarterly reports painted a troubling picture. Despite their success, Stone Dynamics was hemorrhaging talent. Employee satisfaction scores had plummeted, innovation had stagnated, and their latest product launch had been a disappointing failure. So the board was breathing down his neck, demanding change. "What do we know about her approach?" he asked finally. Glancing at the portfolio, she specializes in organizational transformation through human-centered design. Her track record shows consistent results in companies our size. She turned around Zenith Corporation in 18 months. The unexpected arrival at exactly 9 a.m. The conference room doors opened, and Victoria Blackwood walked in. Nathaniel felt something shift in the carefully controlled atmosphere of his world. She wasn't what he had expected from her corporate headshot, a professional but unremarkable woman in a standard business suit. Instead, Victoria commanded attention without demanding it. Her auburn hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and she wore a navy blazer over dark jeans and comfortable flats. But it was her eyes that caught him off guard, intelligent, warm, and completely unimpressed by the imposing boardroom, or the collection of executives seated around the mahogany table. "Good morning," she said, her voice carrying a subtle confidence that filled the room. "I'm Victoria Blackwood, and I'm here to help you remember why you fell in love with this company in the first place." Thomas Wright, the chief technology officer, chuckled. "That's assuming we ever did." Victoria smiled, and Nathaniel noticed how it transformed her entire face. "Oh, but you did." Every company starts with passion, with someone believing they can change the world. My job is to help you find that spark again. The challenge begins for the next hour. Victoria presented her assessment of Stone Dynamics with surgical precision. She had somehow managed to identify problems that Nathaniel himself had been struggling to articulate. Her slides showed declining creativity metrics, increasing turnover in key departments, and a culture survey that revealed employees felt disconnected from the company's mission. "The issue isn't capability," Victoria explained, clicking to her. "Final slide. It's connection. Your people don't feel heard, valued, or inspired. They're executing tasks, not pursuing a vision." Grace Chen, the HR director, leaned forward. "What do you propose?" "Complete cultural restructuring. We need to tear down the barriers between departments, create cross-functional teams, and most importantly, humanize leadership." Victoria's gaze briefly met Nathaniel's. "People follow leaders they trust, not just ones they fear." The words hit closer to home than Nathaniel cared to admit. After the meeting, as the executives filed out discussing implementation timelines and budget allocations, he found himself alone with Victoria in the conference room. "The first crack in the armor, you have questions," Victoria said, beginning to pack her materials. It wasn't a question. "Several," Nathaniel admitted, moving closer to the table. "Your proposal essentially asks me to dismantle everything I've built here. Not dismantle, evolve." She looked up at him directly, and he felt that strange shift again. Stone Dynamics is successful, but success without satisfaction is just expensive misery. Your people are talented, but they're not engaged. There's a difference, and you think you can fix that. I think you can fix that. I'm just here to show you how. There was something in her tone, not condescending, not challenging, just honest, that made Nathaniel pause. When was the last time someone had spoken to him without calculation, without weighing their words against potential consequences? The cultural barriers you mentioned, he said carefully, some of them exist for good reasons. Structure prevents chaos. Rules prevent complications. Victoria tilted her head, studying him with those perceptive eyes. What kind of complications? The question hung in the air between them. Nathaniel found himself wanting to tell her about Jennifer, about the sleepless nights and legal battles, about the way passion could turn into poison when mixed with power. Instead, he straightened his tie and stepped back. The kind that can destroy everything you've worked to build. An unexpected connection over the following weeks, Victoria became a fixture at Stone Dynamics. She conducted interviews with employees at every level, observed team meetings, and analyzed workflow patterns. But it was during the late evening sessions, when the office had emptied and only the cleaning crew remained, that Nathaniel found himself drawn to her workspace. Victoria had claimed a small conference room on the 15th floor as her temporary office. Through the glass walls, he could see her working by lamplight, surrounded by sticky notes, whiteboards covered in diagrams, and empty coffee cups. She worked like an artist, seeing patterns and connections that others missed. One Thursday evening, he knocked on her doorframe. Working late again, she looked up, pushing a strand of hair behind her ear. Your people have stories to tell. I'm just trying to listen to all of them. She gestured to the wall of notes. Did you know that 60% of your engineers have ideas for improving existing products, but they've never shared them because they don't think anyone wants to hear? Nathaniel entered the room, studying the organized chaos of her research. And you believe they would share these ideas if asked? I believe they would share them if they trusted that someone cared about the answer. Victoria stood, moving too. Stand beside him, as they both looked at the wall of insights. Your employees don't see you, Nathaniel. They see a title, a position, a set of policies. But there's a person behind all that structure. The use of his first name surprised him. In the office, everyone called him Mr. Stone or Sir. Even Rebecca used his full name in most conversations. But Victoria said Nathaniel like she knew him, like she saw past the carefully constructed professional persona. The moment everything changed, what do you see when you look at this company? Victoria asked softly. Nathaniel considered the question, really considered it. I see order, efficiency, predictability. And what do you see when you look at yourself? Question caught him completely off guard. No one had asked him that in years. He looked at his reflection in the darkened window, expensive suit, perfect posture, controlled expression. The image of success. See someone who learned that caring too much can cost everything. Victoria was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was gentle. What if the real cost is not caring at all? Something cracked inside Nathaniel's chest. For the first time in 8 years, he felt the wall he'd built around his heart develop a hairline fracture. Victoria wasn't just challenging his business practices. She was challenging the very foundation of who he had become as they stood there. In the soft lamplight, surrounded by the hopes and dreams of his employees written on colorful paper, Nathaniel realized that his most important rule was about to face its greatest test. Because looking at Victoria Blackwood, seeing her passion for people and her belief in second chances, he was beginning to remember what it felt like to want something more than just success. The rule was simple: no love at work. But Victoria wasn't just work. She was the possibility of becoming human again, and that terrified him more than any corporate crisis ever could. 3 weeks into Victoria's transformation project, Stone Dynamics faced its biggest crisis in years. Their primary competitor, Quantum Industries, had just announced a revolutionary product that directly threatened their market position. Boardroom buzzed with nervous energy as emergency meetings stretched into the night. Nathaniel found himself relying on Victoria more than he had anticipated. Her ability to see solutions where others saw only problems had become invaluable. One particularly intense strategy session, she proposed something that made the entire room go silent. "What if we don't compete with them?" Victoria said, standing at the whiteboard with a marker in her hand. "What if we collaborate?" Thomas Wright nearly choked on his coffee. "Collaborate with Quantum. They've been trying to destroy us for 5 years, exactly," Victoria replied, drawing interconnected circles on the board, "which means they know our weaknesses better than anyone, and we know theirs. Instead of a destructive war, what if we created something neither company could achieve? Alone?" The late-night revelation that evening, as the executive team debated the radical proposal, Nathaniel and Victoria found themselves alone in his office, working through the financial implications. The city sparkled below them, but neither was paying attention to the view. "You realize what you're suggesting could either save the company or destroy it," Nathaniel said, loosening his tie for the first time in Victoria's presence. "The best solutions usually carry the biggest risks," she replied, looking up from her laptop. "But staying safe isn't really living, is it?" Something in her tone made him look at her more carefully, speaking from experience. Victoria sat down, her pen, and leaned back in her chair. "I was married once. Safe marriage, safe house, safe life. Was so afraid of making a mistake that I never made any real choices at all. When it ended, I realized I had spent 5 years existing instead of living." The honesty in her voice created an intimacy that made Nathaniel's chest tighten. "What changed?" "I learned that the biggest risk is not taking any risks at all." She met his eyes directly. "What about you? What made you choose safety over everything else?" The truth emerges for a moment. Nathaniel considered deflecting, maintaining the professional distance that had served him well. Something about the quiet office, the shared exhaustion, and Victoria's unflinching honesty made him want to tell the truth. "Her name was Jennifer," he began, surprised by how rusty his voice sounded. "She was brilliant, passionate, everything I thought I wanted. We worked together for 2 years before anything happened, and when it did, it felt like the most natural thing in the world." Victoria listened without judgment, her expression open and patient. "For 6 months, I thought I had everything. A thriving business, and a woman who understood my work, my dreams, my fears. But when it ended," he paused, remembering the pain. "She took half my senior team with her to start a competing firm, used everything she knew about our strategies, our clients, our weaknesses. It nearly broke the company. And you decided love wasn't worth the risk." "I decided mixing business with personal feelings was a luxury I couldn't afford." Victoria was quiet for a long moment, then said something that surprised him. "She didn't leave because the relationship ended, Nathaniel. She left because she never felt like an equal partner in it." The dangerous proximity over the following days, their collaboration intensified. The quantum proposal required delicate negotiations, detailed financial modeling, and a complete reimagining of Stone Dynamics' future. Nathaniel and Victoria worked 8-hour days, surviving on coffee and takeout, their professional relationship evolving into something deeper with each passing hour. It was during one of these marathon sessions that Chen knocked on the conference room door, looking concerned. "Nathaniel, there are rumors circulating," she said carefully, "about you and the consultant. Some of the board members are asking questions." The words hit like ice water. Nathaniel immediately stepped back from where he had been standing, close to Victoria, reviewing documents on her laptop. "Kind of questions?" Victoria asked, her voice steady, but her posture tense. "The kind that could complicate the quantum negotiations if they reached the wrong ears." Grace replied diplomatically. After Grace left, an uncomfortable silence settled between them. Victoria began packing her materials with mechanical precision. "Maybe I should work from the hotel for a few days," she said without looking at him. "Victoria, nothing has happened between us." She stopped packing and looked at him directly. "Hasn't it?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Something had happened, something neither of them had planned or expected. Late nights had turned into shared stories. Professional respect had deepened into personal admiration. And the careful distance Nathaniel maintained with everyone else had somehow disappeared completely with Victoria. "The quantum meeting is tomorrow," he said, instead of answering. "You need to be prepared." "We are prepared," Victoria replied. "The question is whether you're prepared to trust that not every business relationship has to end in betrayal." That night, Nathaniel sat in his empty penthouse apartment, staring at the city lights and thinking about trust. About Jennifer, who had used his feelings as a weapon. About Victoria, who challenged his ideas without trying to undermine him. About the difference between love that takes and love that gives. His phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. The presentation is solid. Whatever happens tomorrow, we built something good together. The quantum negotiation the next morning. Nathaniel and Victoria presented their collaboration proposal to both companies' leadership teams via video conference. Victoria's research had been flawless, identifying synergies that could benefit both organizations while maintaining their distinct identities. But it was Nathaniel who surprised everyone, including himself. 5 years ago, I would have rejected this proposal immediately, he said, looking directly at the Quantum CEO on the screen. I believe that protecting what we had built meant never taking risks with competitors. But I've learned recently that the biggest risk is being too afraid to trust. He glanced at Victoria, who was watching him with those perceptive eyes that had somehow seen past all his defenses. Stone Dynamics accepts this collaboration not because we're weak, but because we're confident enough in our value to share it with others. The meeting ended with a preliminary agreement that would be worth millions to both companies. But as the conference room emptied, Nathaniel realized the real victory wasn't financial. The breaking point that evening, Victoria knocked on his office door one last time. She was holding her final report and a resignation letter from the consulting firm. The project is complete, she said, setting the documents on his desk. The cultural changes are in motion, the collaboration is moving forward, and your employees are already more engaged. My work here is done. You're leaving. My contract is finished, Nathaniel, and we both know it's better this way. But as she turned to go, something inside him finally broke, not shattered, but broke open, like a dam that had been holding back too much for too long. Victoria, wait. She stopped but didn't turn around. I've spent 8 years believing that the safest way to live was alone, that caring about someone meant giving them the power to destroy everything I'd built. But these past weeks with you, I remembered what it feels like to be part of something bigger than just success. Slowly, she turned to face him. I can't promise. There won't be complications, he continued, his voice stronger now. I can't guarantee that mixing business with personal feelings won't create problems, but I can promise that losing you feels like a bigger risk than keeping you. Victoria studied his face, and he could see her weighing his words against everything she had learned about him. What are you saying, Nathaniel? I'm saying that some rules are meant to be broken, and I'm asking if you'd be willing to help me figure out what comes next. 6 months later, Stone Dynamics had transformed into something neither Nathaniel nor Victoria could have imagined when they first met. The collaboration with Quantum Industries had produced groundbreaking innovations that revolutionized both companies. Employee satisfaction scores reached all-time highs, and the company culture Victoria had envisioned was becoming reality. But the most significant change was in Nathaniel himself. Gone was the rigid CEO, who ruled through fear and distance. In his place was a leader who held morning coffee sessions with different departments, who remembered employees' names and asked about their families, who made decisions based on both data and intuition. Victoria had stayed officially hired as Director of Organizational Development, but their relationship had evolved far beyond professional collaboration. They had learned to navigate the delicate balance between personal feelings and business responsibilities, creating boundaries that protected both their work and their growing love. The test of trust there. Relationship faced its first major test when a disgruntled former employee leaked information about their romance to a tech industry gossip blog. The headline read, "Stone Dynamics CEO breaks his own rules for love." The story spread quickly through social media, accompanied by speculation about favoritism, conflict of interest, and history repeating itself. Some board members called emergency meetings, and competitors circled like vultures, hoping to exploit any sign of instability. But something unexpected happened. Instead of scandal destroying their credibility, the story of their relationship became a symbol of authentic leadership and positive change. Employees rallied around them, sharing stories of how the new culture had improved their work lives. Clients expressed confidence in a leadership team that practiced what they preached about human-centered business. Thomas Wright, who had initially been skeptical of Victoria's methods, stood up in a board meeting and said, "6 months ago, we were hemorrhaging talent and losing market share. Today, we're leading our industry in innovation and employee satisfaction. If this is what happens when our CEO follows his heart, I say we support him completely." The proposal on a quiet Sunday morning, Nathaniel and Victoria walked through Pike Place Market, sharing coffee and browsing the flower stalls. It had become their weekly tradition, a time away from the office where they could simply be two people in love, not CEO and consultant. As they stopped at their favorite spot overlooking Elliott Bay, Nathaniel felt the small velvet box in his jacket pocket and knew it was time. "Victoria," he said, taking her hands in his. "A year ago, I thought I had everything I needed. Successful company, a controlled environment, a predictable life. But I was wrong. I had success, but I didn't have purpose. I had achievements, but I didn't have joy." Victoria's eyes began to shine as she realized what was happening. "You taught me that the most powerful force in business isn't control or strategy or even money. It's trust. It's the courage to be vulnerable with the people who matter. It's choosing love over fear, even when love feels like the bigger risk." He knelt down on one knee, pulling out the ring, a simple, elegant design that matched Victoria's understated style. "Will you marry me? Will you be my partner in everything, in business, in life, in all the adventures we haven't dreamed of yet?" Through tears of joy, Victoria said yes. And as Nathaniel slipped the ring onto her finger, she whispered, "You know this means we'll have to update the employee handbook." They both laughed, remembering the famous rule that had once seemed so important. Their wedding 6 months later, was a reflection of everything they had learned about love and leadership. Instead of a traditional ceremony, they hosted a celebration at Stone Dynamics headquarters, transforming the office space into a garden of lights and flowers. All their employees were invited, along with partners from Quantum Industries and other collaborating companies. The event became a symbol of the new kind of business culture they had created together, one where personal relationships strengthened rather than threatened professional success. Grace Chen served as the officiant, having gotten ordained online, specifically for the occasion. In her speech, she said, "Love in the workplace used to be taboo because it was seen as a weakness, distraction, a liability. But Nathaniel and Victoria have shown us that love is actually a strength that makes us more committed. It's more creative, more willing to take risks for something bigger than ourselves." The legacy, 2 years into their marriage, Stone Dynamics had become a case study in business schools around the world. The company that had once been known for its rigid hierarchy and strict policies was now famous for its innovative culture and employee-centric approach. Nathaniel and Victoria co-authored a book titled Breaking the Rules: How Authentic Relationships Transform Business, which became a bestseller and led to speaking engagements at conferences worldwide. But their greatest achievement wasn't professional, it was personal. They had created a marriage that was truly a partnership, where both individuals thrived while building something beautiful together. One evening, as they sat in their home office reviewing the quarterly reports that showed another record-breaking year, Victoria looked up from her laptop and smiled. "Do you ever miss the old rules?" she asked playfully. Nathaniel considered the question seriously. "I miss the simplicity sometimes. It was easier to make decisions when I didn't care about the consequences for real people. But I don't miss being alone, even when I disagree with you in board meetings. Especially then," he replied, moving to sit beside her. "You make me better, Victoria. You make everything better." The circle complete as their 3rd anniversary approached. Nathaniel and Victoria announced the launch of the Stone Blackwood Foundation, dedicated to helping other companies create more human-centered work environments. Their first initiative was a mentorship program pairing established leaders with up-and-coming professionals. Focusing on authentic leadership development, the foundation's motto, suggested by Victoria and embraced by Nathaniel, was simple: rules should serve people, not the other way around. Standing together at the foundation's launch event, surrounded by employees, partners, friends who had become family, Nathaniel reflected on the journey that had brought them here. He had started with one rule: no love at work, and ended up discovering that love at work When built on respect, trust, and shared purpose. It's the most powerful force he had ever encountered. Victoria squeezed his hand as they prepared to address the crowd, and in that simple gesture, Nathaniel felt everything he needed to know about the future. They would face challenges, make mistakes, and navigate the inevitable complications that came with mixing love and business. But they would do it together, with honesty, courage, and the unshakable belief that authentic relationships in all their messy, beautiful complexity were worth every risk. The CEO, who had once ruled through fear and distance, had become a leader who inspired through love and connection. And the woman who had taught him to break his most important rule had become his greatest partner in creating something neither of them could have achieved alone. In the end, their love story wasn't just about two people finding each other. It was about discovering that the most transformative force in business and in life's into control or strategy or even success. It's the courage to be completely, authentically human. And sometimes the most important rules are the ones we have. The wisdom to break. The perfect ending 5 years later, the full circle, the annual Stone Dynamics company retreat was held at a beautiful lakeside resort in the mountains of Washington. 5 years had passed since Victoria first walked into that boardroom and challenged everything Nathaniel thought he knew about leadership and love. As the sun set over the lake, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, employees and their families gathered around a bonfire for the final evening of celebration. Children played at the water's edge, while their parents shared stories and laughter that would have been impossible in the rigid corporate culture of the past. Nathaniel stood with his arm around Victoria, watching their chosen family enjoy the peaceful moment. She was 6 months pregnant with their first child. The gentle curve of her belly represented everything beautiful about their future together. The unexpected guest stay. Familiar voice called out from behind them. "Mr. Stone?" He turned to see Jennifer Morgan approaching, looking older but peaceful. She had sold her competing firm 2 years earlier and now worked as an independent consultant, focused on ethical business practices. Jennifer, Nathaniel said, surprised but not uncomfortable. "I didn't expect to see you here." "Grace invited me," Jennifer explained, glancing at Victoria with genuine warmth. "I wanted to meet the woman who succeeded where I failed." Victoria extended her hand with a smile. "You didn't fail, Jennifer. You and Nathaniel just weren't meant to build something together. But that doesn't diminish what either of you accomplished." Separately, Jennifer shook her hand gratefully. "I heard about your approach to relationships and business, the foundation you've created. It's beautiful work." The conversation that healed everything, the three of them walked to a quiet spot by the lake, away from the festivities. For the first time in 8 years, Nathaniel and Jennifer had a real conversation about what had happened between them. "Was angry for a long time," Jennifer admitted. "It's not because you didn't love me, but because I felt like you never really saw me as an equal. I was always trying to prove myself worthy of your world instead of being confident in my own worth." Nathaniel nodded thoughtfully. "I was so afraid of being vulnerable that I never learned how to be a true partner. I protected myself by maintaining control, but that meant you never felt safe enough to be completely honest with me." "What's different now?" Jennifer asked, looking between them. Victoria answered softly. "We learned that love isn't about finding someone who fits into your existing life perfectly. It's about being willing to create a new life together that serves both people's growth." The wisdom of experience. As they talked, other employees began joining the conversation. Drawn by the rare opportunity to hear their leaders speak so openly about relationships, mistakes, and growth, Thomas Wright, now a close friend of both Nathaniel and Victoria, raised his beer bottle in a toast. "To the rule breakers who taught us that the best businesses are built on human connections, not just profit margins," Grace Chen added, "and 2 leaders brave enough to show us that vulnerability is actually the greatest strength." Hayes, Nathaniel's longtime assistant, who spoke the words that captured the true essence of their journey. To Nathaniel, who learned that protecting your heart from everyone isn't strength, it's fear. And to Victoria, who taught him that the right person doesn't threaten what you've built, they help you build something even better. The private moment later that evening, after the fires had died down and the guests had returned to their rooms, Nathaniel and Victoria walked hand in hand along the moonlit shore. The gentle lapping of waves provided a peaceful soundtrack to their quiet conversation. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't broken your rule?" Victoria asked, her head resting on his shoulder. "Every day," Nathaniel replied. "Honestly. And every day I'm grateful I found the courage to choose love over fear." Victoria stopped walking and turned to face him, her hands resting on his chest. "Our baby is going to grow up in a world where mommy and daddy work together, support each other's dreams, and show them that love multiplies strength instead of dividing it." Nathaniel placed his hands over hers, feeling the gentle movement of their child. They'll never know a world where love is seen as weakness or where success means sacrificing everything that makes you human. The final truth, as they stood there under the stars, surrounded by the peaceful sounds of nature and the distant laughter of their extended work family. Nathaniel finally understood the complete truth about rules in love and business and life. Rules were important. They provided structure and safety. But the most important rule of all was knowing when to break the other rules for something more valuable than safety: authentic connection, genuine partnership, and love that makes both people stronger. Stone Dynamics had become more than a successful company. It had become proof that businesses built on trust, respect, and genuine care for people could achieve things that fear-based organizations never could. Their marriage had become more than a beautiful love story. It had become a model for how two strong individuals could create something together that honored both of their dreams while building new dreams they never could have imagined alone. Promise me something," Victoria whispered as they began walking back toward the resort. "Anything. Promise me that no matter how successful we become, how big the company grows, or how complicated life gets, we'll never forget that the best decision you ever made was choosing to trust love over fear." Nathaniel stopped and kissed her forehead. "Gently, I promise. And I promise our children will grow up knowing that real strength comes from the courage to be completely honest with the people who matter most." Victoria smiled, and in that smile, Nathaniel saw their entire future, challenging and beautiful, risky and rewarding, built on the unshakable foundation of two people who had learned that love doesn't make you weak. It makes you unstoppable. The legacy lives on years from now. When business students study the transformation of Stone Dynamics, they would learn about innovative strategies, cultural change management, and collaborative leadership techniques. But the real lesson, the one that changed everything, was much simpler. The CEO had one rule about love at work, and breaking that rule became the best decision he ever made, because sometimes the most important rules are the ones we outgrow. And sometimes the greatest risk is not taking any risk at all. And sometimes love really does conquer all, not by destroying what came before, by transforming everything into something better than anyone dared to dream. The end.